Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to talk tonight. My name is Theresa Schistal, known as Theresa since I moved to England. I would like to tell you a bit about my life and to show you some of my photographs, which you can also see in the Saltaire Collection. I was born in 1931 to Rosalia, or Rosie, and Johann Schistal in Mattersburg, a small town about 50 miles south of Vienna. My mother came from Austria and my father from Hungary. As you can see from these photographs, Mattersburg is beautiful even today, though times were hard. Until 1924, 7 years before I was born, the town had been known as Mattersdorf. It belonged to the Kingdom of Hungary until 1920 and was transferred to Austria as part of the settlement after the First World War, also following a local rebellion against Hungarian rule in 1918. In 1938, when I was 7 years old, the Anschluss annexed Austria into the German Reich. The town's Jewish population, then about 500 people and one of the largest in the region, was soon expelled and had to move to Vienna, where many tried to emigrate. Those who could not manage to leave Austria were later deported and many died in the camps. The only trace of Jewish life left in Mattersburg today are a few gravestones in the old cemetery, which was largely destroyed that year. The Nazis moved into Mattersburg quickly. Here you see a picture of schoolchildren, my contemporaries, being sent to the main square to cheer. You can see that they didn't do this well. One of my 3 brothers, Walter, was press-ganged into the German army. He escaped, but was stopped and interrogated at a Russian checkpoint. They removed his boots, and one of the Russian soldiers was told to take Walter into the nearby wood and shoot him. This soldier deliberately missed, and then told Walter to run just as fast as he could. He did, and so he managed to escape, and eventually walk the 60 kilometers to get home, barefoot. He said he would never forget that man's act of kindness. After the war, in 1946, I was granted Austrian citizenship. Times were still hard as the country recovered from the trauma of the war, and it was hard to find employment. In 1949, I decided to seek work in England through the European Voluntary Workers scheme. I was only 18, had no guarantee of a permanent home in the UK, and it was a tough decision to travel to England alone. Through the European Voluntary Workers scheme, I settled first in a hostel in York before being offered employment at Salt's Mill in 1949. Here in Saltaire, I was given a place to live in the hostel provision which the mill's management had developed to receive European workers after the war. This was on a dedicated floor of Salt's new mill, situated below the main mill on Victoria Road, with other Austrian and some Italian women. Life was hard for many voluntary workers, with hostility from the unions, and a lonely life in large hostels, away from friends, family, and the local community, all making it hard for many to settle. But I was lucky. I made good friends in the hostel, including Trudy Peterson, who stood out for her intelligence and her strong personality. Together, we learned to stand up for ourselves. I remember one occasion when I was short-changed after buying bread at the baker's on Victoria Road. Trudy insisted that I go back and demand the right change. Our finances were very tight, and every penny counted. This photograph shows me in the new mill hostel next to a tree at Christmas time. We were well looked after there, though the 2 matrons in charge took strict control of our lives. They kept a 9 p.m. curfew, although many of the girls would creep out of the windows once the all clear was given. We enjoyed our time outside work, dressing up smartly to enjoy the local amenities. This photo shows me with friends hiring a boat from the Saltaire boathouse. We also enjoyed spending summer days at the Lido in Lister Park. Initially, I was given employment in the spinning department. The photograph here is from before my time, but gives an idea of the machinery. I found the work technically difficult, so moved to the burling and mending department. I enjoyed this work. Here I learnt new skills and became a passer, looking at the work of others and using chalk to circle any patches in the cloth that needed to be reworked. I learnt to pass the work to the most skilled women to correct these pieces. All the women called the pieces of cloth pigs, and eventually this work began to affect my eyesight a little, particularly when working with mohair, a very fine and difficult cloth to work with. Whilst living in Saltaire, I met my husband, Ronald Mortimer, at a local dance and later married him. Ronald worked as a planning engineer at International Harvesters. They were a major employer in the Shipley area. And after the birth of our son, Mark, I worked in several of Bradford's textile mills, including 18 years at Star Mills, until finally being made redundant as a textile worker and taking a job in Bradford's town hall.